All right, good Tuesday evening, Mid-Michigan. Chief Meteorologist Chris Easlick with your Tuesday night update. We will talk about the upcoming winter weather the next couple of days and also take a look at some of the weather as we head into the weekend. Everything sounds good audio-wise on my phone. There's a slight echo. Thankfully, I can hear that, so let's get going. Let's start with some of our winter weather alerts that are in place thus far. These winter weather alerts are for Ogemaw, Clare, and Isabella County. These generally run without getting into the finer details of each individual county, but generally these are going to be running from Wednesday in the morning until Thursday in the evening. And the biggest thing that I want you to take away from this is a multiple day event when it comes to these advisories and that winter storm warning, especially for Roscommon County. And that warning for Roscommon County is not just going to go through Thursday for Thanksgiving, but that will likely go into Friday morning as well. This is going to be a lake effect event for these areas. It is spread out over the course of a couple of days, so the snowfall totals that you see are not going to come all at once. They are going to be spread out over the course of a couple of days, but they'll also, we do have a wind advisory that has been issued for today. These generally run from Wednesday morning as well until Thursday morning. I do think the worst of our winds are probably going to be during the second half of your Wednesday, and we'll have a more specific timeline here coming up as we get through this chat. But they're going to go into effect tomorrow morning. I think you'll definitely notice the wind tomorrow morning, especially more than what you're noticing it tonight. We have that really drizzly, misty look outside, and we usually get that when the winds are relatively light. There's not enough to really mix that moisture around. It almost is like if you were to put something like Hershey syrup in a glass of chocolate milk. If you don't mix it up, it just settles at the bottom. Well, when you're talking about moisture and when we get fog and things like that, it's typically in those situations where there's not a lot of wind because you're not moving that moisture to other layers of the atmosphere. You're just kind of letting it settle right there at the bottom, just like that Hershey syrup and chocolate milk. So that is kind of what we're dealing with tonight, but I think you'll start to see things clear out a little bit as we head towards tomorrow morning. When you get some of that wind picking up, I think you'll start to see some gusts between 20 to 30 miles per hour at first, and then once we start getting into Wednesday afternoon, I think you'll gradually start going up to about 30 to 40 miles per hour, and then I think the evening is probably where we're going to get some of this top end potential that you see here, where the gusts could exceed about 45 miles per hour, and I think there are some certain scenarios where we could potentially even exceed 50 miles per hour at times. And so I think the combination of snow and I think the combination of wind is enough for me to feel comfortable talking about a first alert weather day. And we don't take that decision lightly, mostly because not every situation calls for a first alert weather day. It snows in Michigan during the winter. It gets windy in Michigan during the winter. But I think the level of the wind tomorrow, where we get these gusts of 40 to 50 miles per hour in some areas at the peak, that's enough for a power outage that is going into a holiday. We've got plenty of people on the road tomorrow and Thanksgiving. And also, even if it's not a ton of snow, I put that in the graphic here towards the bottom. Generally speaking, most of our accumulations around the TV5 viewing area, the WNEM counties that run from Flint all the way up to Houghton Lake and then over to Lake Huron, those areas, most of the region is going to get minor accumulations. Roscommon County is an exception. I think parts of Ogemaw County and potentially northern Clare, northern Gladwin, the areas bordering Roscommon County will probably be a little bit more as well. But most of the area really doesn't pick up all of that much. So it's not the snow that is causing me to do this alert day. I was talking with meteorologist Matthew Mondro a little bit earlier, and we talked about our thinking. Stone will be back with us for tomorrow after his weekend. But we seem to think that there is potential for disruptions out on the roads, not necessarily for your whole drive if you're traveling tomorrow, but the fact that you've got 40 to 50 mile per hour wind gusts potentially as some of that snow is falling, I think that could lead to some problems with visibility out on the roads. And so I think it's worth it to create a little bit more awareness. Nobody is saying because we have a first alert weather day that it's the end of the world. Nobody is saying this is the worst winter storm that you will ever be in. It's just the fact that, again, it's a holiday, number one, or going into a holiday. And also just we want you as careful as possible out on the roads because lake effect squalls can be some of the most hazardous weather we have as we go through the winter months. That's why we get pileups, unfortunately, every single year, is because those conditions on areas like 94 or on 69 or 96, we get those rapidly changing conditions, and we can get that here in mid-Michigan on our back roads or on 75 as well. And so that's something that we wanted to highlight with some of the First Alert Weather Day graphics that we have. So since we've got a decent amount on the stream tonight, we've got about 150 people. I'm just going to take a look and see if anyone has asked anything. It looks like a lot of you are watching. We appreciate you watching. I will have the timeline here coming up. I just wanted to give you a quick summary. Winter weather advisories for some, winter storm warnings for others, but I think wind is going to impact everybody that is around the TV5 viewing area, and that is primarily going to be Wednesday afternoon through Thursday morning, and I think the peak of the wind is likely going to come Wednesday evening into the first couple of hours of our Thanksgiving, and it's the low visibility and the slick roads that I think are the hazards that we need to watch out for, not only Wednesday but Thursday as well. And also, lake effect snow too. It's not just a visibility thing. It can come quickly. And so we think there's the possibility that we could get some accumulations very quickly out on the roads, and we want you aware of that as well. So the current situation tonight looks like we've got dry weather. But if you've been outside within the last couple of hours, there are some areas that are going through some drizzle right now. Pretty much similar to what we dealt with a couple of days ago back into last week, where we had that night of slush initially, and then it just changed over to drizzle, and it seemed like that never wanted to come to an end. But tonight we've got the same thing. Now, what you see out to the west is the first wave of what we expect coming through tomorrow. Your hour-by-hour forecast shows there's a positive to all the clouds tonight. We've got temperatures that are not going anywhere. They're in the 40s now, and they're likely staying in the 40s through this entire night. We fast forward to about 4 o'clock tomorrow morning. That precipitation I just showed you, hanging out to the west, moves in towards mid-Michigan as we start the morning commute. It's all rain early tomorrow. Once we get past that, we've got a dry slot moving in. And so the model here has some spotty precipitation through the morning. Don't be surprised if we get through much of the late morning into the early afternoon dry. It's what happens after that you'll notice our temperatures really start to cool down. We start to see temperatures go in reverse as soon as the mid-morning hours of tomorrow. We start in the 40s right behind that cold front that brings that rain. We get dropping temperatures right into the afternoon, and that's when things start to deteriorate a little bit into tomorrow evening. Now, the worst of it, like we've been saying even going back into last week, we talked about how lake effect snow was going to be a possibility Wednesday and Thursday. We talked about how the European models seem to be handling that situation early better than the GFS, and that seems to have come true. The worst of it is going to be on the west side of the state. The worst of it is going to be in northwest lower Michigan. But it's these snow showers that migrate through from time to time, especially as the wind picks up. The winds will be strong enough to get that snow from one side of the state to the other. And so it's embedded within these snow showers. If you see, as I take my pointer tool here, you see some of these darker shades of blue. Those darker shades of blue might indicate some snowfall rates that may be a little bit heavier than just the standard snow that falls in most of the snow showers. So you might be talking snowfall rates of 1/4 to 1/2 inch per hour. And that doesn't seem like much. Our last lake effect event that we had a couple of weekends ago, that was with snowfall rates that were approaching in the heaviest snow showers of about 1 inch per hour. This probably won't get to that level, or at least I'm not seeing many signs that it's going to get to that level. We'll see where the data takes us tonight and tomorrow. But even 1/4 to 1/2 inch per hour, you get that falling into those strong winds, and you've got a visibility problem. And so I think that's something that we'll have to watch very carefully going into tomorrow. And these snow showers, once they begin, while they won't be constant in any one spot, they will give up from time to time. The chance is pretty much going to be there right through Thanksgiving and even into Black Friday as we close out the week. I think it will start to really wind down by then. But this is 4 o'clock on Thanksgiving afternoon, and we've still got a healthy amount of snow showers that are coming through. We've also got temperatures that are in the 30s, some of them above freezing, which is notable. But think about how this year has played out so far. Is we've had events where we've had temperatures that have been above freezing, and even think back to as recently as last week when we had that slush in some areas that caused some slippery roads. If it comes down heavy enough, it can overcome those temperatures. Now, gradually it might be melting from below, but I still think we'll have the possibility of getting some quick accumulations out on the roads. And that's something especially likely Wednesday night into Thursday, as temperatures are going to be at their coolest. And you see even Thursday night, when we've still got some of these lake effect snow showers coming through, we've got temperatures that are dropping into the upper 20s and to the low 30s. So before I get to the accumulations and before I get to the winds, let's just see what we've got thus far. We're still at 120 people. We're fluctuating. Let's see, but this isn't even affecting the TV5 viewing area. So Stacy asked that question. It is affecting the TV5 viewing area. It's not affecting the TV5 viewing area in the way that we aren't getting the worst snow. We aren't. What we are getting is the winds, and we are getting the potential for lower visibility and quick accumulations out on the roads. We're not talking about this major snowstorm. This is primarily concerns for travel on a busy travel day on Wednesday, and the potential for lake effect snow even into Thursday, causing some problems too. It's also because of the wind. The wind is the primary reason we have decided to highlight this as a first alert weather day tomorrow. The wind gust potential between about 40 and 50 miles per hour for some areas at the peak. That is what we're concerned about, not necessarily the snow by itself. The worst of the snow, again, is going to be on the west side of the state. It's going to be to the northwest of us. But Roscommon County is in the TV5 viewing area, and Roscommon County is under a winter storm warning. And there are certain areas like Ogemaw County and even the counties to the south, like Clare and Gladwin County. Those are the areas that will likely pick up some decent snowfall as well, bordering Roscommon County. So I know it's not going to be as worse, the worst case scenario here compared to other sides of the state, but we still have snow to talk about, and we still are going to get some accumulations here and there. As far as the forecast goes with the weekends, I think that will be a better chance for some accumulating snow over a wider area of mid-Michigan. But let's not diminish the travel issues tomorrow. And even wind on its own at 40 to 50 miles per hour can cause some problems out on the roads itself. It can be a bit of a nuisance. So here's the snowfall map. This is our first run at a snowfall outlook. And maybe this time around, it's better to look at it as more of a snow potential. And here's what I mean by that is we just ran through that model of scattered lake effect snow. You noticed in between some of those lake effect snow showers, there are areas where there's not much going on. There are breaks in the coverage of those snow showers. And so that's why in this zone right here, this area right here, the lighter shade of gray, is we have a trace to 2 inches. And it's in those areas where this comes into a play. Highly variable accumulations possible. And that is to account for the scattered nature at times of these snow showers. There will be areas that are persistent with the snow more than others. And so I think it's in this gray zone where you will get some totals of 1 to 2 inches here and there. And then just like our last lake effect event going back a couple of weekends ago, there were areas like Freeland that got slammed, and there were areas like the Thumb that got slammed on Monday. But then you had other areas that between Sunday and Monday hardly picked up anything at all. And so that's why we have a trace to 2 inches. There will be some areas in that gray zone that may not pick up much at all, and then there will be areas that pick up a couple of inches of accumulation. And again, the key for this is from Wednesday through 8 a.m. on Friday. These are a couple of days of snowfall total. So Houghton Lake, we've got this area right here in that winter storm warning that is included in a 6 to 12 inch zone. That 6 to 12 inches goes from what we pick up Wednesday all the way through Thursday and through the early morning hours of Friday. And that is why you have that winter storm warning for Roscommon County. Not as much around the northern sections of Clare, Gladwin, and Ogemaw County. These areas are more downwind of the worst of it, so you're in a better position than, say, Saginaw is, or a better position than, say, Alma is. But you're still not going to get the worst of what Roscommon County gives unless we see some changes in the data going into tomorrow, which is very possible. That is the reason I want you to know this is our first outlook with this snow. Meteorologist Matthew Mondro will get another chance tomorrow morning to refine this. Stone will be in for me tomorrow. I'll still be helping out. I'm off the rest of the week, but still will give you updates throughout the week. But they will have some time tomorrow to get the absolute latest data and make any refinements necessary going into Wednesday night and also into Friday. I also think it's possible that we get not only a connection from Lake Michigan to the north and west. But Lake Michigan, even though it doesn't seem like it, gets a bit of a connection from Lake Superior. So we get that moisture feed from Lake Superior. That moisture feed goes across Lake Michigan for some lake effect snow there. And then we can even get a little bit of a contribution from the Saginaw Bay. So I think it's possible we pick up some decent snow in the thumb. But again, that could be a wide range too. 1 to 4 inches seems like a pretty big difference from place to place. But that's because of, again, it's going to be where some of these more persistent bands set up. It could hit a place like Bad Axe pretty hard, and then you go just a few miles to the west and you may not see much of anything. And so that is why there's a lot of variation in some of these totals. I also think there's an area right here that we need to watch, right around Bay County and Aranac County. If we get some of those good bands coming from Roscommon County, maybe we might have to extend this area just a little bit further. Not going to do that just yet, but I think that's something worth watching. In Mount Pleasant in Isabella County, you're under a winter weather advisory for about 1 to 3 inches of snow, according to the National Weather Service in Grand Rapids. But there are some signs where Isabella County is kind of in a weird position where you're close enough to some of this lake effect, but you're not necessarily a sure thing in some of this lake effect. And let me see if I can show you a quick tool on that. Let's see if we have any more comments as we're coming through. And Stacy, no problem. That's a really good question. Because the first alert weather day, Stacy, while I'm pulling this up, the first reaction we get is because we think it's going to be snow. Because our winter minds think snow. Anytime we think of bad weather, we think snow. But I think it's more of a combination between them this time. So I don't want to diminish your question. And if it came off that way, I apologize. But that's the reason we're talking about this tonight. So let me pull this up. This is from the National Weather Service. They put these really helpful tools for us, and they're publicly available if any of you are interested. But they give us probabilistic snowfall forecasts. And what these do is, let me pull up our computer screen here. And we can take a look at what the probability is of a certain amount of snow. So if we start at 1 inch of snow, and this is where I think Mount Pleasant is tricky, is 1 inch of snow pretty certain in places like Big Rapids, Cadillac, Houghton Lake. We've got dark shades of blue indicating close to 100%. But if we zoom up to about 2 inches of snow, and this goes from 7 o'clock tonight all the way through 7 o'clock in the morning, or nope, 7 o'clock in the evening as we go into Friday. Notice the possibility of Mount Pleasant getting 2 inches of snow is only at about 30%. And we get these probabilities based on all of the models sort of put together. And we look at those models a little bit more under the hood and we say, how many of them are giving us more than 2 inches in Mount Pleasant? How many of them are giving us more than 2 inches in Saginaw? How many of them are giving us more than 2 inches in places like Big Rapids? And so we can use this to sort of refine our snowfall ranges a little bit more. And then if you go to 4 inches of snow, Mount Pleasant only has about a 2% or a 2% chance of doing that. And so if you go back to our graphic here, Mount Pleasant is under that advisory, the winter weather advisory, but they're just in a very tricky situation as far as where that lake effect snow is going to be. So I think that is an area, Isabella County. Maybe we see where the data takes us tomorrow. Is there a little bit of a wind shift that might direct it a little bit more into Isabella County? Is it more so the western or northwestern edge of Isabella County? I think that's something we'll have to solve here. But that's kind of what our thinking is with that snowfall map. And if we look over, we can do the same thing to the thumb. Let me see if I can get it from the Detroit office because we'll be able to see it a little bit better for the thumb. But we can do those probabilities just the same for areas like Bad Axe, where I've highlighted that area that we could pick up a little bit more snow. We have that 1 to 4 inch range around the thumb region. And so this is the percent chance of 2 inches of snowfall or more. And we are getting at least a few areas that are close to 50%, so about a coin flip. in some of those regions, or the percentage chance of about an inch of snow or more in that area, it's a little bit better than a coin flip. So we just want to be thorough in that region to at least allow for the possibility that the thumb could pick up some decent bands of lake effect snow. And it may not be the entire thumb. It may not be this entire area that we highlighted, but I think it's worth at least seeing how the data evolves over the next couple of days. And that's why this is our first run at these snowfall totals. And again, highly variable, I think, is the key. Before we go into wind, let me take a look at what we're seeing. Let's see. And again, we've got the weekend snow we're keeping tabs on as well. We're going to try to get through the next couple of days before we get to the weekend, but I think we have a chance at some accumulating snow this weekend. So I'll leave the snowfall map up for those of you asking questions specifically over the next couple of days. Again, these are Wednesday through Friday. Pam says, thanks for all the information. Vakita says, be safe this weekend. Yeah, everyone be safe traveling. Again, this is not the worst winter storm you're ever going to see. It probably won't even be the worst one that we see this winter. But it could be a nuisance out on the roads the next couple of days. Here's the wind. This is 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. These are the gusts, not the sustained winds. I think your sustained winds are potentially going to be between about 20 and 30 miles per hour. But you'll start to notice the wind gusts picking up to about 25 to 35 miles per hour tomorrow morning. We fast forward to lunchtime. Your wind gusts are starting to pick up into that 30 to 40 mile per hour range, a little bit lighter the further north you go. This has been a consistent signal, I think, over the last couple of days. It's that northern fringe that just isn't quite as persistent with the wind. You will get your fair share, I promise, but it might take a little bit longer to get there. And then we take a look at the evening hours, and you're starting to get more of these values around 47. If you look close enough, occasionally a 50 pops up. We've got a 50 here going into Wednesday evening. And even as we go towards midnight into Thanksgiving, the wind really doesn't let up. It dies down a little bit, just relatively speaking, to what we see during the day on Wednesday and what we see during the night. But once the wind really picks up on Wednesday, it's probably not going to give us much of a break until we go into into Thursday night and also Friday. And we're getting to that point in the year where it just might be the difference between outright windy and just breezy. There's not many days we get calm winds this time of year. Let me see. What is left? So just a quick summary. I don't want the stream to go too long, and we still have our 10 o'clock newscast, but this is the summary graphic that I've put together for those of you just joining us. So we have the first alert weather day that's primarily in effect from Wednesday afternoon through Thursday morning in all the WNEM counties. Our main concern, not the snow. Our main concern is the wind combined with the snow. So the wind advisory goes from Wednesday morning to Thursday morning, gusts of up to 45 to 50 miles per hour possible, maybe even 55 as we get a top end range. I think there's a chance of that, especially closer to the shoreline. They're going to get some pretty good wind on the west side of the state near Lake Michigan. But power outages going into a holiday, snow showers that develop, and those snow showers falling into gusty winds like that, could we get some really low visibility? I think that's possible. Slick roads are a possibility, even with minor accumulations for most of the area the next couple of days, especially when you consider it will be spread out. The roads can accumulate quickly if you get under one of those lake effect snow bands. Assuming it's heavy enough and assuming we have cold enough temperatures, you can get rapidly changing conditions, whiteout conditions with some of these winds. So main message, just be careful. Wind advisory in place for the entire TV5 viewing area. That goes into effect tomorrow morning, lasts all the way through Thursday morning. Peak of the wind, I think, is Wednesday evening through early Thursday morning. And then lastly, we have winter weather advisories for Isabella, Clare, and Ogama counties. And we have a winter storm warning for Roscommon County. Roscommon County is the winner right now in the snowfall sweepstakes. Roscommon County, closer to Lake Michigan, closer to those traditional lake effect belts. that is where we're expecting the heaviest snowfall in our area. The worst snowfall is outside of the TV5 viewing area. If you're traveling to the north and west for Thanksgiving, I would be very careful, or even check in if you have relatives in these areas, even if you're not familiar with the forecast for them in their area. I would see what they've been observing with their forecast before you make the trip, if it is in the winter storm area, especially as you get further to the north and west. Just because you want to make sure you know what you're driving into in those areas. I would be very careful if you're headed in that direction. I know it's Thanksgiving. I know we want to see our families, but the lake effect snow in that region could be a little bit intense. And some of the totals are pretty impressive. If you're considering going to the UP, I would highly, highly suggest that you check out that forecast before you go. The UP is, at least parts of it, are going to get buried. Hernando says, thank you for the update. Hernando, no problem. Stacy asks, with the leaves now off the trees, is that a good or a bad thing? Stacy, that's a good thing. We did see some power outages with that last event a couple of weekends ago because we still had so much vegetation on the trees. Plus, it was a heavy wet snow. So I was going through my neighborhood after that snow, and we didn't even get that much, at least initially. But the trees were so weighed down, it almost looked like an ice storm had happened because of how much weight that snow had on the trees. So I think it's a good thing, but even so, once you get up to about 40 to 55 miles per hour with the gusts, especially if they're persistent, you still have power outage potential. And especially if the ground is wet, just like it's been wet today, you've got old trees, you've got dying trees. They come down pretty easily if the ground is a bit soggy. Tristan says, drive safe, everyone. Good advice. Michael has a cool last name. Michael Easlick says he wants 20 inches of snow. My producer's laughing at me over there. Easlick, good name, good name. It depends on your weather preferences, I suppose. Some of you might be throwing things at your phone or throwing things at your monitor. Michael Herrick, one of our producers, joining the chat as well. Thanksgiving Day. Will it be dicey going from Bay City to Saginaw? I think that will be manageable. The key between these snow showers is there will likely be some breaks along the way, and so it may not be for your entire drive. But what I want you to do, regardless of whether you're going to Bay City to Saginaw or whether you're going any other place, is just have the situational awareness to know that it could go from dry and clear for a moment, and then all of a sudden, you're in a lake effect snow band and conditions could deteriorate pretty rapidly. Michael says, thanks, I had the last name first. Yes, you did. So I guess I can't fight you on that. All right, I am going to end the stream there tonight. The one thing I think is at least a little bit better with this lake effect event compared to the one we had a couple of weeks ago. I'm not getting as much of a signal, at least up to this point in our data, that we'll get the snowfall rates of up to 1 inch per hour. That could change. Lake effect, we often don't get the best data until right before that lake effect is going to happen. That's why it seemed like a couple of weekends ago that forecast ramped up very quickly. And that's because a lot of times lake effect relies on very small scale processes, and sometimes those are not clear until we get right up to the event. But right now, the snowfall rates don't look quite as high as what they were for that. We'll see if it stays the case. Other than that, if you don't hear from me on the stream, because I'm off the rest of the week, I will still be updating social media. You will get information through that. You will also get updates from Matthew and Stone. Meteorologist Diane Phillips, she is off this week as well, enjoying some time for Thanksgiving. But we will have you covered one way or another. And we will also, again, I want to highlight this, the 7-day forecast quickly before I actually have to go for good. I keep delaying that. I'm doing the Midwest goodbye on this stream, taking my time. But we do have the alert day possibilities highlighted on Saturday and Sunday. And so what we want to do is we want to get through the holiday first and then we will start getting some clarity towards the weekend. A lot of our data is going to fluctuate between now and then, especially. So I'm not necessarily thinking we're missing anything up to that point, but I think there's a growing consensus that we're headed more towards snow rather than mixed precipitation. But we are unfortunately still in that window where things can go through some wild changes sometimes. Not necessarily the case every time, but I just want you to know that. And any snowfall amounts that you're seeing this far out for the weekend, probably a little bit too premature. So you can use them as maybe a general guide, but if it seems too good to be true, it likely is most of the time, or seems too extreme to be true, it likely is. But I think we'll have a chance to pick up a little bit more snowfall this weekend. So we have our eyes on that. Don't think we're ignoring that. We are, but we think we have some wind to get through tomorrow and also some snow to get through. So I will check the comments after we're done with the stream. Thank you all for joining, and we will talk to you next time.